Okay, lesson 13. We start with a new subject today, the chakras. There are 7 chakras from the bottom of the spine, the tailbone, up to just above the head. But because of its importance, we start with Ajna Chakra instead of Muladhara Chakra. So in lesson, I think lesson 3, the second Sunday, I already explained about Ajna Chakra because it's very important. It's a crucial element central to your yoga understanding of yoga. Ajna Chakra is the mental body. So you have 5 chakras from the bottom going up, which constitute the physical body, roughly. Then you have Ajna Chakra, which constitutes the mental body, and then above that you have Sahasrara Chakra, the crown chakra, which constitutes the spiritual body. Why is Ajna Chakra so important? Because Ajna Chakra is considered to be the commander-in-chief, the boss in your system. It's the location of intellect, and it is in fact the interpreter of everything that you experience, everything that you feel. All your emotions, desires from lower chakras are being interpreted in Ajna Chakra, understood in Ajna Chakra. At least the potential is there if you are conditioned to learn to understand that. Not only that, the crown chakra provides also a huge amount of data based on the things that you sense, intuition, contemplation. But the crown chakra does not have the capacity to make that concrete. So making data concrete is done in Ajna Chakra, whether it comes from below in the form of lower emotions and desires, or from above in the form of insights and wisdom, vision. The problem with Ajna Chakra is, the problem with the human being, I should say, is that we have a tendency to function subconsciously. So we have a huge amount of thoughts going on, but it is subconscious, and therefore we have no control. And the purpose of your meditation, yoga, physical practice, in a proper way, which makes it meditative in itself, and added to that, sitting on your cushion and meditating, observation, concentration, meditation leads to that subconscious flow becoming conscious. Truly magic. The purpose of our education system as we know it today was in fact to condition the intellect in Ajna Chakra. The problem is that that education system as we know it has lost sight of the importance of sattva. So education leads to enormous conditioning of Ajna Chakra, which is very important, but it lacks the sattva, so it ends up leading to the subconscious thought flow staying intact, remaining subconscious, and we develop an enormous capacity to mentalize things, memorize things without understanding them. Just purely, it's like filling your computer with programs that just dutifully repeat each time their task, but outside of that, there's nothing new, nothing revolutionary. It's just purely mentalizing. As a result of your practice, sattva occurs, and an entity that we call the sixth sense, which is the same as intuition, starts to manifest in the intellect. And that leads to, whenever you are confronted with some theoretical knowledge, whether it's from a book or from watching the news or any kind of input of information, you process that and you develop your own insights, you draw your own conclusions. So not just storing it, not just memorizing it, being capable of reproducing it, but actually developing new insights from it. So the work has mostly been done in all those years of education that you have received. All that we now have to do is practice yoga correctly so that sattva occurs, not only in the lower chakras, but in Ajna Chakra. When you meditate, you sit on your cushion, or even when you are standing or sitting in some of the asanas, it's very likely, very possible, that you start hearing nada. When that occurs, it is an indication that the mind has become relatively quiet. You are in a contemplative mode, which indicates there is sattva. So sattva doesn't come with a bang. It doesn't come with stars and sparkles and what have you. It's very subtle. But the one thing that indicates that you are experiencing sattva is a sense of well-being, a sense of calm, peace of mind. In yoga, every serious yoga book that you read, this is the essence of yoga. Because all development, all growth, all evolution, all manifestation is only possible if there is sattva. So the more sattva, the more solid, the deeper the sattva, the more you benefit as a human being. The Ajna Chakra in itself actually exists out of two entities. I think you know this already from lesson 3. This is the brain, which consists out of the big lobes of the brain. It's called the cerebrum. And you have the small lobes of the brain, is called the cerebellum. Ancient people, without the benefit of intellect, because they didn't have education, they were very sensitive, very intuitive, very connected with spirits, with subtle energy, with the universe, with nature. All their energy was concentrated here, which is the location of intuition. That is why ancient people, without a highly developed intellect, rational thought, they were very sensitive, very intuitive. But lacking the power of rationalization, they did not understand what they sense. So this explains why older generations are plagued, or maybe it's too negative to express it like that, but superstition is something that occurs as a result of not being able to understand what you sense. So you start speaking of ghosts being scary. When you go into the forest or into the mountains, you're scared because you sense something but you can't explain it, because it's subtle. The modern human being, actually, on the other hand, has all its energy located here because of our modern education system. And energy is finite. You have an amount of energy. If all that energy is here, there's little left for the intellect to function. As a result of our intense education, all the energy is drawn here, to the big lobes of the brain. And that leaves little energy here. So we are the opposite of ancient human beings. We are rationally top-heavy, but we have lost connection. Connection with the world of spirits, with nature, with the universe, with intuition. So with yoga, we have the benefit of this huge development of the intellect. All we have to do is install sattva so that the energy fluctuates between the two. And instead of working against each other, it starts to become nicely working together. Go back to the handout. In sattva, when there is sattva in Ajna Chakra, it expresses itself as observation, sixth sense, intuition, presentiment and telepathy, but only, of course, when there is sattva. Now, to give you a practical example of how this works, I remember when doing exams when I was in school. We would have a designated period of exams, 1 week, 1.5 weeks, by twice a year, around Christmas time and towards the end of the school year. So you arrive at school, you have no other classes, only your exams, 1 or 2 per day, and all the students are nervously walking around before they enter the room to do their exam, and they ask, "Did you learn? Did you study well?" And I always shrug my shoulders, and I was not a very diligent student. I would just do the most necessary preparation 1 or 2 days in advance. But I would always score pretty well. And there were students who would study very hard, very diligently every day, and they were very frustrated not being able to score well. What is the difference? Is I would arrive at school, get a cup of tea, and sit in the windowsill and just watch the street, stare out in the street, the cars passing by, the people walking to the bus stop, kind of in a contemplative mood. The moment that I have to sit down and answer questions, if I don't know the answer exactly, I would be able to dig up something from my memory that is related to the question. It's not accurately answering the question, but you always get points for that because the teacher recognizes that you know what you're talking about. People who are nervous and are up until the moment that the door to the exam room opens, they are still trying to pump in more knowledge, theory into their brain. They often black out. The moment that they have to perform, the mind shuts down and they cannot. Even though they know everything they need to know, it just doesn't come out. So this is the power of sattva. Sattva in Ajna Chakra. Your energy circulates, you are creative. And when you need to answer questions, even if you don't know accurately the answer, you come up with something that is related to it, and you always score points for that. In Rajas, Ajna Chakra in Rajas leads to creation of thought and thought control. it's the kind of people that are very mental. Not sensitive, but purely mental. They can have a very overbearing mental presence, kind of scary even sometimes. In tamas, it leads to uncontrolled thought production, which has a tendency, because it is tamas, to become negative and leading to gloominess, depression, negative thought, pessimism, but most importantly, restless thought production, no control. That is a condition that many people are suffering from when not engaged with anything. Now we talked about the yamas and the niyamas, especially with the yamas. We have come to the conclusion that things that we do are not limited to our physical actions. Words also have an effect, and unexpectedly, even thoughts have an effect. And this is, of course, a function of Ajna Chakra. And I mentioned with the yamas that when you have a thought, people feel the quality of that thought. If there's aggression in your thought, people feel that and they will react in kind. Telepathy is mentioned before, and that is a mental function. And to give a practical example of that, I included in the handout an article from a medical magazine, Pregnancy or Pregnant Through Prayer. So one day I came across this article in a Dutch a medical magazine, and have you read it? If you read it, you can feel cynicism. Right? Because it was written by scientists. Scientists who performed a research project with the premise, with the expectation to prove it wrong. And instead, the outcome of the research showed that it's actually quite significant, the difference. And this is about prayer. And it is involving the Cha Hospital in Korea. What they did is they took a group of 199 women, at least that is what the article says, so say 200 women, and they divided them in two groups, 50-50, so 100 for whom they would ask people to pray, and 100 as a placebo group. Then they asked 3 groups of Christians to pray. To reinforce the other group, they asked 3 groups of Christians in 3 different locations to pray for them, in the US, Canada, and I think Australia. Yes. So 3 layers deep of mental power to send good vibrations to those women to help them to become pregnant. And the outcome was that the placebo group, 25% of the women became pregnant. This is about IVF treatment. The Cha Hospital is famous for helping women to become pregnant when they can, or couples to become pregnant when they can. And 25% of the placebo group became pregnant, and 50% of the group for whom was prayed became pregnant. So that's a 100% difference. Double the amount of women became pregnant for who was prayed. They were stunned by the outcome, couldn't explain it in a scientific way, in a rational way, so they kind of started mocking the result of this research. Why do scientists do this? Because they are afraid to lose their reputation. You cannot rationally, you cannot put prayer into statistics. Well, at least they did, but not with concrete explanation. How does it work? We know, of course, because we believe in subtle energy, we believe in the power of thought. Basically, they've proven it, and then they try to rationalize it away, scared of damaging their reputation by believing in something that many rationally thinking scientists would outright dismiss. Why is this important for us? It tells us that we have a responsibility to pay attention to what we think. Because what you think does affect other people. It is the reason why I chose the name Magic Pond for our yoga. You throw a stone in the water and you see the ripples spreading. So if that stone is negative, it spreads negativity. If your thought is negative, you spread negativity around you. And vice versa, of course, when your thoughts are positive, you spread positivity around you. And subtle as it may seem to be, it is very apparent, very clear. The subtle energy that governs the chakra is called Sukshma Prana. The mental body is called Sukshma Sharira. This is just not so very important, but that is what it's called. I included also a chakra chart just for your information. It's helpful, maybe. Okay? Because we talked a lot about Ajna Chakra already, there's not so much more I can add to this. So let me know if you have questions.
I have one question. Does
Yes.
also negative thought,
Huh?
negative thought,
Yeah?
can be influenced like in other people's lives?
Yes.
For example, like positive first, okay, so we are with that. But if once like some people have some negative thought about some group, then that doesn't work.
Yeah, it's equally as effective.
Then nothing will go back to them.
That is another story. That's the story of karma. If you have negative thought and you cause negativity and it's affecting other people, of course it will come back on you. If you have positive thought and you influence people positively, it comes back to you in a positive way. If you live life in a positive way, regardless of your circumstances, it's like planting seeds. And sooner or later, sometimes many years later, those seeds start to grow and good things start to happen. In the same way, if you live life in a negative way and you affect people negatively, you are also planting seeds. And sooner or later, they will start to grow. And that negativity will come back to you too. It will come back to haunt you, definitely.
So I have like the other question. Suppose that like some person has a negative thought, like person A has a negative thought with person B. So how person B can protect this thought?
Okay, the question is, person A has negative thought about person B. How can person B protect itself against that negative thought? By sticking to your own. By not becoming reactive.
So we receive that negative, right? But we shouldn't take any action, anything.
Yes. Do you understand this question? When somebody has negative when somebody is malicious, is having a negative intent towards you, undertaking actions that harm you, how do you deal with that? You revenge. That is usually the instinctive way to do, right? You start a fight, you start a conflict, you protect yourself, you resist. But
so suppose that like
no,
in a far distance.
I'm not done yet.
Okay.
Because that is not the thing to do. Because when you do that, it causes a vicious cycle, tit for tat, where nobody gets better. So how do you deal with that? That was the question. How do you deal with that? Focus on yourself and your own life. And do not go along with that person's negativity. No matter how bad. You know, how do you justify that? How do you calm down your instinct to combat, to fight, to revenge? How do you deal with that? Trust the law of karma. The law of karma works. Believe it or not. I've seen it time and time again. Anytime you feel tempted to punch somebody on the face or in any way to get your right, to revenge, to set things straight, take a step back and just remind yourself that if that person has such a negative mindset, such a violent or evil intent, it sooner or later will come back to that person. The thing is, when you understand that, you do not want to be responsible for that. Because then it becomes your karma. If I have a beef with a person because that person is malicious towards me, I'm not God. So it is not my task to be that person's karma. If I do, it becomes my karma. So I just have to stand back and allow the universe or God to do its work. I know from experience that really, sooner or later, you will be confirmed to be right. So just go on with your own life, focus on your own thing, and ignore these people. Difficult as it may be, if you know how it works, just let it go. Sooner or later they will be caught up by karma. The thing is, as yogis, you more and more become conscious of the law of cause and effect, which includes, of course, how karma works. People who just go about life in their ignorant condition, which is the majority of people, they don't even see the law of cause and effect at work. Or if they do, in a very rough way. They do not see karma at work. They do not see when misfortune hits them, that they actually caused it themselves back in time. They just think, oh, how unfortunate am I that I get sick, or how unfortunate am I that I lost my job, or my car was stolen, or they don't see the connection. They just think, I'm so unlucky, I'm so unfortunate.
Why
Yes, yeah, even. Why me? Why not them? As a yogi, whenever something happens, you know exactly what caused it. I do, and you also more and more will know what caused it. And because you know that, more and more, you develop more and more insight, which is the function of Ajna Chakra, to grasp that, to have that insight. You become more and more careful also, and more controlled. And that control is very difficult because it is dealing with primordial instincts of survival. And that is why Ajna Chakra is important. It's mind over matter, literally. Control over emotions and desires, which include your deepest primordial instincts. Good question. So remember this about karma. Karma really works. I've seen it at work many times. It may take time, sometimes years, but that's okay. It's very satisfying to understand that at that time when you need, sometimes you're just so upset that you want to satisfy your hurt, your anger, your feeling mistreated, and you feel the need to do something to revenge. If you can control that, the day that you see that karma does its work, you will feel so good about yourself for having been able to control yourself. It sounds very logical, but many people find it incredibly difficult to do.
My question was like that. Suppose that person A located in USA,
Yeah.
person B located in like Korea, they have like no connection, similar to that research. So if person A has like wish like miserable for like person B, so then that one also will affect person B or not. Because that research shows that like good thought may affect.
Can you give a concrete example?
Concrete.
Yeah.
Like similar to that research, like there was like some groups located in different like countries.
Yeah.
And like some patients like in here in Korea.
Yeah.
Okay, so they made a like good wish for them,
Yeah.
and it worked, right?
Yeah.
So,
Apparently it worked.
Right. So suppose that like that group made like a negative wish.
Yes.
For example, like miserable life for like some people like in somewhere. So that also may work.
In the same way. Yeah, in the same way.
Then how, for example, if someone made a miserable wish for me, how can I protect myself? I don't know who is that one, and where the negative energy comes to me.
Okay, let me give a concrete example. Look, Mr. Trump has been sowing negative seeds for years, long before he became a president. But becoming a president, he felt empowered to he has no idea. What I see is somebody who's digging a hole, and that hole has become so deep he can't come out of it anymore. And it just gets worse and worse. And in the grand scheme of things, COVID is a reaction from the universe to reset what went wrong. So maybe Mr. Trump will never be able to see or to acknowledge what is happening and why it is happening, that he possibly caused it, but he did. I have no doubt about that. he knows nothing about karma, but it is happening big time. That the fact also that he caught the disease himself, I knew that that would happen sooner or later. I just didn't know why it didn't happen yet. But it was inevitable. That's karma. How should he deal with that? He should start correcting himself. He should start because he's undergoing a lot of misery, that he doesn't recognize that misery, because his way of dealing with disharmony and conflict is piling more conflict on top of it. It's kind of like who shouts loudest will win. But you can't live like that if you are the least bit sensitive and conscious. He's just totally oblivious, totally insensitive to that. But because he has such a huge influence, the counter reaction from the universe is also with events that are affecting on a global scale. And COVID is one of those things. How do you deal with that to protect yourself? He caused it in the first place. If he wants to protect himself, he should correct himself. If you feel that your life is going down the drain because you start to realize that you've lived your life stepping on toes and on a much smaller scale than what is happening with the illicit drug. The moment that you realize that all the misery and suffering that you are undergoing, there comes a day that you realize that in fact it is you who are the cause yourself. The moment that you realize it, you protect yourself against all that misery that is catching up with you by correcting yourself. Learn from your pain and your misery. Correct yourself. Start doing good instead of bad. And you will see that things will turn around. It may take time, because karma just doesn't stop the day that you decide to stop acting maliciously. It may take time, but you will correct. And you will come to the point that indeed the misery will stop, and on the contrary, good things will start to unfold. Absolutely. That natural law is very powerful, but most people don't see it at work. Can you see that? Or do you think I'm talking nonsense? Yeah?
I saw a video of Trump saying, thanks God that he got corona. It means he was God's almost like a gift, because now he's immune, and he was addressing crowds in time this week. So I'm now immune, and can come and kiss your beautiful girls. And
yes. He demanded a drug test from Biden. They should have given him a drug test because he was on steroids. And not only that, this man is all hot air. Because we know that when he realized he got sick, he shit his pants. He was scared to death of the disease because, although he never admitted it, he knew that this disease is no joke. He shit, but he will never stand there admitting that he was scared, but he was scared to death. He didn't deserve all the good care that he got, that other people are denied, but he will get what he deserves anyway. There's still a chance that he becomes a president. Well, that means that we have some karma left, I think. Yeah, there's always a way to see reason in it, but can't be that bad, can it? I hope not. Another 4 years of Trump. I think we have to move to Mars or something.
I have another question, right?
Yeah.
Subconscious mind.
Subconscious mind, yeah.
So, as we know that, 90% or 95% of our daily action is based on our subconscious mind, right?
Yeah, a large part. I don't know the exact percentage.
Yeah, but So if there is some like wrong thing in our subconscious mind and we don't know what it is, then like what is like wrong, then how we can trace?
Meditate. The answer is meditate. The subconscious mind is subconscious because it is subtle. And the human being, when not properly conditioned, is designed to perceive gross impressions. So the human being is functioning based on what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we feel, touch, and what we taste. So those are, we consider that gross senses. Subconscious thought is very subtle, and we just don't see it, because we are distracted by the world of matter, gross matter. That is again where the concept of doubting Thomas comes from. We don't believe what we cannot see, feel, hear, smell, or taste. That is why so many people resist wearing a mask in Europe and America. They can't see it, feel it, hear it, taste. Unless somebody dies in their family, they say, well, it's not that bad, and I'm getting tired of staying at home. I just want to go out and drink and eat and meet my friends. But if you just sit down and close your eyes and realize what is going on, although it is subtle, the disease is subtle, you can't see, hear, feel, taste, or smell it, the numbers show that it is having a huge impact. So wise people will realize that, and they will not question it. But it is about half. Half of the population is just like, hey, man, this is nothing. It's nothing. Until they get hit by it themselves. Christie, the New Jersey governor, Christie, he came on TV honestly saying, I was wrong not to wear a mask. He was also a doubting Thomas. He went to the meetings at the White House and he got infected. He had the disease and he became a convert. But the difference with him is he's honest about it. He tells millions of people that he was wrong. And Trump just cannot do that. If you ask my opinion, he is the embodiment of evil. There's no conscience in this guy, no heart in this guy. That is where evil starts. And you see that throughout history. And fortunately, there are things in place that prevent him from totally derailing. But it is bad enough as it is, in my opinion. Enough about that. I kind of don't like to talk about it because it's politics and it can divide. Maybe you like him, but it is too beautiful an example not to use. It's so obvious. Yoga is the science of the human being, and it's a perfect specimen to make certain elements or aspects of yoga clear. Anyway, we have another subject, so let's take a short break, practice asana, and then I will explain about kriya before we do the meditation. Okay?